The Starship Glaver thrummed with the quiet precision of a vessel designed by the galaxy's most meticulous species, the Sands. Known for their obsession with order, the Sands and their diverse crew valued predictability and discipline above all else. So, when they accepted their first human exchange officer aboard, disruption was inevitable. Lieutenant Kyle Varner strode out of the docking corridor with his trademark casual grin, a stark contrast to the rigid posture of the Sands officers waiting to greet him. Commander Ural, her tall, sleek form glowing faintly with the emerald hue of her species, stepped forward. Her expression was a practiced mask of politeness. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant Varner," she said, her voice smooth but tinged with formality. "We trust you have reviewed our protocols." Kyle adjusted the strap of a small carrier slung over his shoulder. "Read every line," he replied with a wink. "Well, skimmed it. You guys sure love detailed instructions." Before Ural could respond, the carrier's zipper shifted and an orange, furry head poked out. Wide green eyes blinked lazily at the gathered crew. The creature let out a deep yawn before curling back into its plush bed. The room fell silent. One Sands technician dropped his multi-tool, the clatter echoing through the sterile space. Kyle gestured proudly to the furball. "Meet Jelly Bean. She's my cat." A ripple of murmurs swept through the control deck. Ural stiffened, her glow dimming slightly, a Sands equivalent of narrowing one's eyes. "Lieutenant," she said carefully, "pets are strictly forbidden aboard the Glaver, as per Galactic Regulation 2437D. Kyle leaned in conspiratorially. "Right, but that's mostly aimed at big stuff, like wolves or Komodo dragons. Jelly Bean's tiny. She's harmless, I promise." The cat punctuated his statement with a soft purr, entirely oblivious to the interspecies tension her presence had sparked. Ural studied the small predator, her disciplined mind wrestling with the unorthodox situation. "For now," she said finally, "she may stay confined to your quarters. Any disturbance, no matter how small and loaf, is ejected at the next docking point." Kyle saluted with a grin. "You got it, Commander." That night, Jelly Bean explored Kyle's quarters with the unhurried curiosity of a creature convinced the universe was her playground. She pawed at the glowing panels, leapt onto the bunk, and finally settled in Kyle's lap as he reclined with a datapad. "You're going to charm them," Kyle said, scratching her ears. "Give it a week, and they'll be lining up to pet you." Meanwhile, 2 decks away, Commander Ural and her officers gathered in the observation bay. A holographic replay of Jelly Bean emerging from the carrier loop before them. "Those teeth," murmured a technician. "Those claws. It is a creature designed for killing, yet it shows no signs of aggression," Ural mused. "Perhaps humans have domesticated it so thoroughly that it has forgotten its instincts." Or, another officer countered grimly, "It's biding its time." Over the next several days, Jelly Bean became the talk of the ship. Some crew members were enchanted by her soothing purrs, while others remained staunchly opposed to her presence, citing her predatory nature. The tipping point came during a maintenance operation in the environmental ducts. The Sands engineers froze as a faint scratching sound echoed through the narrow corridors. "Something is in here with us," one whispered, their glowing eyes wide with fear. "Relax," Kyle said. "It's probably just a multi-legged creature, the size of a large dog and bristling with iridescent scales, skidded out of the shadows, hissing and revealing rows of needle-like teeth." The engineers scrambled backward, panic breaking their usual composure. "It's a Vorian stalker," one shouted. "We're unarmed." Before Kyle could react, Jelly Bean launched herself at the stalker with a low growl. Fur and scales blurred in a chaotic tangle of motion. Moments later, the stalker retreated battered and hissing, vanishing into the ducts. Jelly Bean sat down nonchalantly, grooming herself as though nothing had happened. The stunned Sands stared at her in silence. Finally, Ural's voice broke the quiet. Perhaps we underestimated the loaf. Kyle crouched down to pat Jelly Bean's head. Good job, Jelly. You just saved the day. Again, word of Jelly Bean's heroics spread quickly. She was no longer just a pet, but an enigmatic asset. Despite Ural's initial reservations, even she couldn't deny the peculiar bond forming between the human, his feline companion, and the rest of the crew. Jelly Bean's biggest test came during an anomaly investigation. The Glaver had encountered a derelict vessel emitting irregular electromagnetic pulses, disrupting the ship systems. A reconnaissance team, including Kyle and Jelly Bean, was dispatched to investigate. The derelict's interior was a labyrinth of twisting corridors and pulsing veins of light. As the team explored, faint shadows flitted just out of reach. The atmosphere was heavy with unease. Suddenly, the team stumbled into a chamber dominated by a central core. Glyphs flickered across its surface, and the air buzzed with unstable energy. As the Sands engineers examined the machinery, a sharp clang reverberated through the room. Emerging from the shadows was a towering insectoid creature with blade-like limbs. More followed, their synchronized movements menacing. "We've got company," Kyle said, stepping protectively in front of Jelly Bean. Before anyone could react, the cat darted forward, her fur bristling as she hissed at the advancing creatures. To everyone's astonishment, the insectoids hesitated, their movements faltering. Jelly Bean leapt onto the core, her claws slicing through wires with unnerving precision. The room trembled as the glyphs flared brighter, then dimmed. The insectoids collapsed, their energy drained. "What just happened?" an engineer whispered. Kyle smirked. "She fixed it." The engineers stared at the cat as she casually groomed herself, completely unbothered by her act of heroism. Kyle leaned down and whispered, "You're a legend, Jelly. Absolute legend." Back aboard the Glaver, Commander Ural addressed the crew. "Today, we faced an unprecedented threat. And once again, Lieutenant Varner's companion proved instrumental to our success." The crew erupted in cheers, much to Kyle's delight. Jelly Bean, as usual, seemed unimpressed, contentedly grooming herself. From that day forward, she was no longer just a passenger, but an official member of the crew, known as the Glaver Special Operations Advisor. For Kyle, she was simply Jelly Bean, his loaf, his problem solver, and, as he liked to joke, the true brains behind their operations. The cat's growing legend extended beyond the ship. Tales of her exploits spread to other starships in the fleet, making Jelly Bean something of a galactic celebrity. Despite the attention, Kyle often joked, she hasn't let it go to her head much. But deep down, he knew Jelly Bean was one of a kind, a tiny predator with a big impact, and the best companion a human could ask for.